Hello. In this short video we are going to look at answering answer booklet 3. So this is for the ICT NWK 401, the skills assessment, answer booklet 3. It's related to this assessment, and we're looking at part 6, which is implementing and test disaster recovery methods. So it's where it suggests that we use the answer booklet 3. Which is this document over here. Okay, so what it's really about is backup and recovery. And so here it says test condition, main server goes down, not operational due to an unknown issue. Backup server should be operational and provide access to the essential services. So any user that belongs to the staff group should still be able to log into the domain, access the network resources without any disruption. And so we're going to test that. So the first thing to do is to do the backup and configure the backup server as the backup domain controller according to the organizational guidelines. So we need it to be a backup domain controller. Okay. And then we need to restore the main server data to the backup server. So server backup procedures, restore, all that sort of thing. Okay, so let's have a quick look at our servers. So looking at our Active Directory users and computers, we will see that in the domain controllers we have the main server. However, in here it says configure the backup server as a backup domain controller. So what we need to do here is to, where our backup server is currently just a computer, we need to promote it to being a domain controller. So we're going to do that. Here's our backup domain server. We do that by going to add roles and features. Next. And what we want to do is add the Active Directory domain services. Add all the features and go next, and install. So one of the reasons why we'd want the backup domain controller to be, or backup server to be a domain controller, is that if the first server falls over, then we've got another domain controller. Now what we need to do on this is to also have DNS and also so we want the DNS, and we also want it to be a global catalog to allow people to log in. And that would mean that there's a duplication of those sorts of basic infrastructure that the clients would need in order to be able to log into the domain. So we also need to set the backup server as the repository for backing up the data from the first server as well. Okay, so the installation of the required features has been installed. We now need to go to the notification and promote this server to being a domain controller. And we're going to add this domain controller to an existing domain, which is bmw.local. So we just go next. I need to supply a user account name. Okay, so I'm going to change this and use the BMW/administrator and the password, because it was logged in as a local administrator, not as the domain administrator. So we're using the domain administrator credentials. Next. We also need this to be a DNS server and also a global catalog. The global catalog is the thing that allows people to be able to authenticate against this server. And the DNS is a replication of DNS in case the first server goes down. So it's always a good idea to have at least 2 servers capable of doing both of these roles within every domain, in case one of them falls over, obviously. We're trying to eliminate single points of failure. So we give it the right password. Verification of safe mode password failed. Does not meet the... okay, doesn't meet the standards, because what we did was we put in a group policy on the server which said that it needed to be 10 characters or something like that. So that's, let's just put, that should be enough. Yep. So what I did was I changed it from password 9 to password 99 because that made it 10 characters long. Okay, so update the DNS delegation. Delegation for this DNS server could not be created because the authoritative parent zone could not be found. Show more. This is not a child domain and therefore needs a parent zone. It's going to be part of the same domain, so I'm not going to worry about that too much. Active Directory replication between these 2 servers will sort all that problem out now. So here we've got replicate from any domain controller. We could point to the main server, but any domain controller is quite fine. That's the usual place for Active Directory databases, so we're just not going to mess with it. Next. So it does forest and schema preparation and domain preparation, so that's fine. Next. Okay, all the prerequisites have been done. It's got the usual things. We just go install. So now it's going to upgrade the forest so that it handles Server 2019. Doing a DNS installation, which sorts out this second error. Oh, warning, actually it's not an error. So now it's finished, it'll do a reboot. Okay, so let's click in there, logging into the domain. Okay, and you can see our group policy is working. Okay, so if we look at the tools and look at the Active Directory users and computers, which I could have done on the main controller. It doesn't matter. Domain controllers. So you can see that both of these servers are now domain controllers, and they're both global catalogs, DC types. The other place that we can see this is in the tools, sites and services. So under sites, default first site, all the servers, we can see both machines here. And also if we look at the NTDS settings, right mouse click, properties, this is where you can check whether it's a global catalog server or not. There needs to be a connection between these two machines, and currently there isn't, but it'll take a little, probably 30 seconds or 3 minutes or something, and it'll automatically generate a link between these two machines because they are in the same site container, which is called default first site name. The replication between these two servers will be on an as needed basis, so any changes happen for one will happen to the other one. The other area that we're interested in is the DNS server. So we've installed a DNS server on here, but is it synchronized with the DNS server on the other machine? And we can see here that we've got two name servers, both the main server and the backup server. So at the moment everything looks pretty good. You know, DNS all looks fine. And on the main server we'd want to see the same thing. So, so let's go on the main server, we go to DNS. Now this may be different at the moment, and it is, because we don't have those two links between the two machines yet, and we haven't forced a synchronization between both servers. And we need to do that so that all these things are consistent. And you know, once they get into a full replication, then that will happen. So if I hit refresh on this, nothing as yet. Okay, so if I go to the tools and look at the sites and services, it doesn't matter which server you use to do this with. Default first site, servers, there's the two servers, and there's no links there as yet. There's a couple of ways of forcing replication. You can replicate to and from, so this is to and from, so this is like a push and a pull. So it says will not continue. The directory server is too busy to complete the replication at this time. Okay. And obviously, it says that one's replicated. If I did, you can't see that one replicating at the moment, but properties, it is a global catalog server. So let's do you can see this automatically generated a link from the main server to the backup server, and we want to see the same thing here. There's from the backup server to the main server. So we've got a replication link now automatically created between these two. It took a little while, I think maybe because I just forced a replication, that might have fixed it. So let's have a quick look on here. If I do a refresh on these, you'll see that that's the case there as well. Now the way, you can just right mouse click on these and go replicate now, and it will replicate to and from the machines. And because I'm on the backup server, if I do a right mouse click in here, there's nothing, but on the opposite one I can do a replicate to and from. Now this should work quite fine because we've had our initial replication. Yep. Now so what should happen now is on our main server, if I do a refresh on our DNS, I should see we've got both servers as name servers. And you can see that they're both there. Okay. Now that was because we forced a replication between the two servers. But what we want is for this to happen automatically, and normally it will. Okay, it just will. So the problem is this doesn't give you a real lot of information. This is the way that you would force replication between the two servers. But you can get more information if you do things from the command line. So if I was running a command prompt here, there's a command line called rep or replication, repadmin, replication administration. If I go /?, it'll show me all the different commands, and there's a heap. Okay, there's heaps of them in there. But one of those is the thing that says show replication, displays the replication status when the specified domain controller last attempted an inbound replication activity partitions. So, and there's also another one here which is sync all, synchronizes a specified domain controller with all its replication partners. So they're the two common ones that I use. Show the replication that's happened just recently, and to force a replication from the command line is repadmin/sync all. So if I went repadmin /show replication, it shows me first of all the 3 partitions in Active Directory replication, and then the 2 DNS zones, because this is a DNS server. So the first part of the Active Directory replication is the domain information, so it says via remote procedure calls, and that it was successful at 3:10, which was like 3 minutes ago. Then there's configuration information, which is like it's like who's in which group, and it's all the relationships. It's the infrastructure master role information is contained in this configuration partition. This is the domain information, so this is all the users, the groups, the computers, it's all of the objects. So this is domain information. This is configuration or linkages or relationships, or what's classed as infrastructure master. And this is the schema master, which is for what's used between domains. And the schema is the structure of Active Directory. So it's the structure of Active Directory itself. Like if I talk about a user, it's got a first name and a last name, and the first name is a string of 20 characters, the last name is a string of 50 characters or something like that. So it's sort of like the definition of the records in the Active Directory database. And then we've got the domain-based DNS zones and the forest-based DNS zones. So this is stuff within the domain, this is stuff external to the domain. And all of these things are different partitions in Active Directory that gets replicated between the domain controllers. And these two here is because we've got DNS Active Directory integrated. And if we did the same thing on here, if I went CMD, and I'll just send that to the desktop, to the taskbar. It's a good place to have it. I did a repadmin /show replication. I get the same information. Actually, there was one done just recently, 14. Okay. And these are all basically done at 3:10. Now I can force this by going repadmin /sync all, SINC, sync all. And what it does is it says I've contacted my partner and requested all the stuff to be resent to me. And it says it terminated with no errors. So if I do the show replication, remembering most of these were 1510, they're still all 1510, but there is another one at 1515, which is one that we just did. So the partitions that had changed have been resent, and there wasn't much that needed resending, so all good. Okay, so exit out of that. We've now got 2 domain controllers that are replicating with each other quite fine. DNS is all in there, and they're both global catalog servers, which means if the main server failed, then the backup server would take over completely, and the users will not know the difference. So let's have a look at the other ways of providing resilience if we have a disaster. So part of what we're doing here is we're testing sort of resilience here in the event of a catastrophe. Okay, simulated disaster is what we're looking at. Simulated disaster scenario. Okay, testing network functionality in a simulated disaster scenario. Okay, so and the test condition is that the main server goes down, is not operational due to an issue. Required outcomes that the backup server should be operational and provide access to the essential network services for any user that belongs to the staff group should still be able to log in as a domain user and access network resources without any disruption. Okay, so we need to make changes or additions to the backup server configuration to meet the desired results. So one thing we've just done is we've just turned this into an additional domain controller and got our linkages in place and replications worked as well. So how do we show that? We're going to create a screen capture of that. So I'm going to go to Sites and Services, and I'm going to show that we've got the two servers and that we've got Active Directory replication links. I'm also going to put in the DNS because I want to show the two name servers. So what we'll do is we'll just sort of put that down there, and we'll put the other thing up here so we can see both of those things. So we've got the two servers there in the domain. We've got automatic links working. We've got both name servers and DNS. I would take a screen capture here. So this is on the main server. Right Control and E. We'll take a screen capture of that virtual machine, and it's going to put it in the main server. And so within our document here, restore the main server backup, testing scenario. Here's the configurational changes, client requirement. So I'm going to put the first picture in there. Let's go insert picture, device. I have to go to drive C, down to the virtual machines, to the main server, and it's going to be the latest, that one there. So I'm just going to insert that. And I didn't want to see that. What I wanted to do is make that smaller. Okay. So these are the configuration changes that we've made. We've made it into a domain controller that does Active Directory replication, and it's another name server in there. That was the main thing. The other thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to create a backup directory on the backup server, which makes sense. So that's the main server. Let's go to our backup server. And in here on our drive M, I think, yep, M, we're going to create a new folder, call it backups, and we need to share that. So properties, sharing, advanced sharing, we share the folder with permissions, we remove everyone, we add in administrators, check the name, administrators group, give them full control, and then we add in authenticated users. Authenticated users are going to have read-write, and we go OK on that. So that's the backup server backups share. Now we need to make sure that our NTFS file level security is the same as our sharing permissions. So in here you've got all this inherited stuff. First thing you do is you go to advanced, remove inheritance or disable inheritance, and then remove all the inherited permissions. That just leaves the administrators here with now full control, and we add in the authenticated users. Authenticated users, and we're going to give them up to modify level, which is like read and write. So it allows them to create their own directory. So we could have one of the users also being able to back up to this backup directory directly across the network. Okay, so that's our backup folder, which is here on our backup server. And what we will need to do is to create a backup of the server into here. Okay, so on our main server, if we go Tools and right down to the bottom, you'll see Server Backup. Now the problem is it's not actually installed. And it will tell you that Windows Server Backup is not installed on this computer. Okay, so we have to go to the Server Manager and select that feature. It's a feature, not a role. Okay, so let's go to Add Roles and Features. Next. Now we're to Features. And what we want is Windows Server Backup, that one there. Okay, so I'm going to go Next, and we're going to install it. So this is on our main server. Now we've already got some features between our two servers. We've got our distributed file system, which allows replication of the files between the servers anyway. But we're going to make a backup in case something happens, and we can recover the files to the backup directory and continue operations for all the clients. So that feature's installed. So now when we look at tools and the main server backup, this is now a working application. It's installed. Okay, local backups. So let's have a look at our what we need in here. Server backup procedures include relevant screenshots below the procedures followed when performing a server backup. Okay, so we need to put a screen capture in there. For this client report, we're testing the disaster recovery procedures or something like that. What do they call it? In here, they called it the simulated disaster scenario, testing the simulated disaster scenario. So we need a server backup procedure there. So and then we need to restore the main server data to the backup server. We've already sort of got that happening anyway with our disaster recovery, our distributed file system happening anyway. A lot of our important data is already across the two servers. So back to our main server here. So you can see no backup has been configured on this computer. Use the backup schedule wizard or the backup once wizard. So we're going to use the backup once. And we're going to go next. We don't want to do the full server because that's 16.68 gigabytes. We want to do a custom. We only want the data. Occasionally we would do the full server, like maybe once a month or something like that. And here we want to add items. And if this was a full backup, then we'd be recovering the system state. We'd actually just hit bare metal recovery and we'd include all drives. Okay, but we don't need to do that on most of our stuff. So if I look at it's the data that's the important thing here, which is not on drive C, it's all on drive R. So we've got collaboration, home, all of this stuff here. So this is where all our corporate data is, so I could just back up the entire drive like that. Don't know whether you'd want the recycle bin or the system volume information. You just want the data files. Okay. So I'm going to go like that. And I'm going to go next. And we're going to back it up to a remote shared folder, which is on our backup server. So if I look at our backup server, hang on, where's the backup server? Backup server, yep. So it's this directory here, but it's we don't want it like that. We actually want it as not as a local drive M. We want it as the UNC naming convention. So so the location is going to be / I think it's just called backup SVR, and it doesn't have the shared folder in there, so it's called backups. There it is, backups. And access control. So this option makes the backup accessible only to users whose credentials are provided in the next step, or to inherit. This option makes the backup accessible to everyone who has access to the specified remote shared folder. So I would go only those whose credentials are applied in the next step, to make it more secure, because you wouldn't want the main server's data backup visible to all clients, which at the moment they've got, they do have read access to that folder. So credentials is going to be BMW / administrator, and his password. They're all the folders that we're going to back up, and it uses this thing called a volume shadow copy backup. So what we want to do is put that to one side like that, and I'm going to go Control E to capture that. So you can see that we're making a backup to the backup server. So it's creating the shadow copies. Well, thankfully it's only 300 megabytes or something like that, not too much. If we'd done a full system backup, then it would have been 16 gigabytes. Okay, so that shows that it's completed. I can do a Control E, save that, go close. So we can see that it was all successful, that we backed it up. Which means on our backup machine here, we can have a look in drive M, in the backup folder, and there's their Windows image backup, main server, blah, 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 it's all there, okay? So we've got the screen captures. So in our document here, backup procedure, insert, picture, device, second last was showing what we were backing up. and we want to see that it was successful. So we go insert picture device. Now the last one, that one. I've got it sorted in reverse order. Okay. So that shows what we were backing up and the fact that it was successful. So we want evidence that the objects were copied to the backup server. Screenshots of evidence of restoring the main server data to the backup server, including the following: evidence of the domain objects copied to the backup server, evidence of synchronization of shared drives in both servers. Well, we've already got that. Okay, we can show that. So let's go, because it wants to see the synchronization. So this is on the backup server. Let's go to the main server. Okay, DNS. So let's go to the main server and show our RAID 5. And I'm going to show the wallpapers. And I'm going to put this to, say, here. And then I'm going to show the backup server. And what I'll do is I'll just move this a little bit here so we can see that we've got the same folder. And what I want to do is I also want to show the DFS management. So I want to show that we've got the namespace replication, let's just say for wallpapers. So if we can show that and then show this on so here's on the main server drive R wallpapers, and we can see drive R wallpapers. We can see drive M wallpapers. So what we need to do is show on here drive M wallpapers. And what we need to do is resize this so that we can see that we've got the same, here's the replication. So we want that and that together. Now I would do this externally, take a picture of this and then pop it in. So in my case, I'll use my GreenShot, capture a region. So I'm going to capture main server through to backup server. So I'm doing both of them. And I want to copy that to the clipboard and put it into evidence to show that the synchronization of shared drives, evidence of local domain, are copied into the backup server. So I need to show this, plus I also need to show that I've when I'm restoring the objects. Okay, so this covers this point here. So let's go insert picture. Actually, I just go Control V is what I do, don't I? Control V. That puts that picture in. That's that one I just took. So that shows main server and backup server. It shows the files on the main server. It shows the distributed file system and the files on the backup server. So we can see that the synchronizations all happened and everything like that. And that's that we've got that replication happening between. So what I need to do now is to show evidence of a restoration, restoring the main server data. Okay, so this is going to be two shots, one showing that I've deleted the information and then that I've restored it. And I'm going to restore it to the backup server and let the replication put it back to the main server. So this is going to be two shots. So I need this one, and what I need to do is to delete, let's go Control A, and delete all of the photos. So I've permanently deleted them all the files, okay? And I'll get rid of the thumbnails as well. Yep. Okay, so I've got rid of all of the wallpapers, and when we have a look at the wallpapers on here, you can see that the folder is empty, okay? So we're going to take a shot that shows that the wallpapers have been deleted. So let's go external, whoops, to my green shot, capture a region. Now you could use a snippy tool to do this, same thing. So let's go copy to clipboard, back over to my document. So here's the first part, Control V. And I want this to be small because I'm going to add the recovery part of it, okay? There's a space there, there is, yep. Okay, there is a space there. So this section here, so let's write on here. Okay, so let's go shows the DFS replication. Working. Okay, so let's go like that. And so in front of this, we want to go shows the accidental deletion of the wallpapers. And how that is DFS replicated. Located, okay. Shows the accidental deletion of wallpapers and how that's DFS replicated. So in here, what we want to show is the recovery. So this is recovering the wallpapers to the backup folder. Shows the restoration of the wallpapers to the backup server wallpaper share. Whoops, helps you don't put a dot in there. And then we want to show that the DFS replication is still working. So we probably preempted this one a bit too much, but that's okay. Shows the restoration of the wallpapers to the backup wallpaper share. Okay, so that's what we have to do now. So from our main server, we're going to run our backup share. Can I look at that in computer management? No, wrong one. I need the server manager, which is that. And I want to show the tools, which is the Windows Server Backup. And I want to minimize that a little bit. And I want to get rid of the server manager. So now I've got, that's the DFS wallpapers. This is the restoration program. And over here, I want to show the wallpapers being restored. Okay, so let's go recover a backup stored in another location. It's on a remote share. It's // backup SVR / backups. That's it. And it was done on the 7th, so that's next. I want files and folders. It's on available items. And I want to see the wallpapers. There they all are. Okay. So what I want to do is, I don't want to restore all of them. I just want to restore a couple to show that it works. Okay, no, I can't. Can I move this? Yes, I can. So back to here, so I can see what comes up, because it's going to come up here and here when I restore it. So what I would do is the African elephant, you know, I might want to just do those. Next, I want to recover it to another location, browse, and it's on the network. I want to restore it to another location. Create copies of both versions. Overwrite. File recovery. Okay, so I want to go to / backup. Actually, really tricky. What we're going to do is we're going to back it up to the DFS share. So we're going to go back up bmw.local / corp data / wallpapers. Okay, so that's where we're going to recover it to. The wallpapers share in the corporate data. The wallpapers folder in the corporate data DFS in our domain. That's where we're going to put it. Oh, recovery to a remote shared folder is not allowed. Okay. Let's have a quick look here. Restore the main server data to a backup, to the backup server. Okay, so instead of doing it from the main server, we should do it from the backup server. That's what we should do. Let's cancel that. Let's cancel that. Let's go to our backup server. Come on, backup server. There we are. So what we're going to do is DFS management. We can remove that for the moment. What we need to do in here is to add roles and features. Next, we want the feature of the backup server. That's a role. Go to the features. Go down to the Windows Server Backup. Next, install. So what we're going to do is we're going to run the restoration of the data on the backup server to the wallpaper folder on the backup server and see that DFS pushes it across back to our main server. Is that what they want, or do they perform? Document the evidence, configure that backup domain control according to that, include the relevant screenshots, server under the section, restore the backup data, and then we test the functionality of the modified system, where the main server goes down, and then we can is operational, provides an essential services. Okay, so both servers are up when we do the restore here. It's only in this point here where we 0.4. So 0.3 we restore the data to the backup server. 0.4 is where we test the simulated disaster. Okay, so we're just waiting for the backup application to be installed on the backup server. Okay, so you can see that the installation has succeeded, so we'll hit close. We're going to go to the backup server, which is now an installed application. Okay, hit local backup. And what we want is restore. So it's reading all the data. Okay, there's been no backup configured on this computer, but we do want to do recover. Backup stored in another location. We could go backup in this server. Could not find any backups on this server. Okay, so we're going to go backup in another location. We're going to use the we can pick the local drive, or we can go to the network version of it. We're going to go to the network version of it, even though it's actually local. So we're going to go double backslash backup server backslash backups. So that's the name of it. Yep, next. And it finds the backup that was done from the main server. And what we're going to do is we're going to do files and folders. Expand it out. RAID 5, go to wallpapers. Click on wallpapers, and we're going to select, those 4, say. 5, okay. Next. And I want to override existing and another location. Can I go browse? I could go this PC and go drive M and go wallpapers and go bang do it. I'll just see if I can go to backup svr/wallpapers, because that is if I browse, I should be able to go network. It's picking up VBox server for some reason. I should be able to go wallpapers like that and go next. The recovery to a remote shared folder is not allowed. Okay, so it has to be a local. To another location. So let's go this PC, drive M mirror, wallpapers, and go OK. So I sort of want to see that it comes back. Well, we know that we're only restoring those things. So I'm going to hit what I'm going to hit. That's the confirmation. So that's sort of like the summary. Let's do a Control E on that and save a copy of that to the backup server folder and hit recover. And you can see that DFS has automatically put it there. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to show this as well. How do I show that? I want to put this in a location that's, no, not like that. So we can see that our backup has worked and the files have appeared. And we can see that they're also gone via to the main server. Okay, so let's go. We'll have to go back to our external, either Snippy tool, or in my case I'm using GreenShot. I'm going to capture a region and I want this whole thing. Okay, I want to copy to the clipboard, and this is the restoration of wallpapers, and it shows that DFS is working. So let's go Control V. Okay, that shows that the DFS is working as well. So let's go Control, cut that and stick that up. Control V. Okay, so shows the restoration of the wallpapers to the backup server share. So we can see it's there, the backup server wallpaper share. And the fact that we've restored it and that DFS has pushed it across to the main server. So I don't think we actually need that picture, because this one shows, because we only restored some of them, we didn't restore all of them, just to show that it was different from the very first time when we were backing up the entire folder. Okay, we were just restoring some of it. Okay, so I think that covers that. So what we need to show here is testing the simulated okay. So what we need is for the main server to go down and for our clients to still be able to get in. So let's have a quick look at our client machine. Okay, so our client machine's here. You is logged in as U2, I think. Let's have a quick look. U2, yep. And so opening up this, if I go /bmw.local /corp data /wallpapers, what I see is those 5 restored wallpapers that we've put in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this thing shut down. I'm going to turn off my server. I'm going to restart my Windows 10 machine, have him back up, log into with only the backup server and still be able to access that same corporate data. So let's, we're going to need to have this up so we can show that our main server is down. So let's push our main server down, shut down. So we're going to see that our main server is down, but our backup server is up. So I want to be able to show that our main backup server is up. We can see that our main server is down. Our backup server is up. And now what we need to do is to start up our Windows 10 machine. So let's show the mirrored drive. Let's show so the wallpapers. We might also show another file explorer. What we'll do is we'll show so we've got the 2 open, we've got the wallpapers, and what we'll do is we'll have in here, I think U2's home folder. U2 was here. And so on our Windows 10 machine, what we want to show is that we've got access to all of this stuff. Okay, so let's move this up to the top here. Let's move this up to the top here so that we can see our main server is off. Our Windows 10 machine is here, and we're going to log in. Do we want to log in as U2 or log in as a completely new user? No, we'll log in as U2. Because it says that the user can still access all the resources, so it's assuming that he was able to access the resources before. Interesting. Can U2 actually get there? can't sign into the account. Okay, so that's interesting. What we want to do is we want to see if he can access all of his resources. So let's just just want to move this thing down a little bit so that we can put that up there. We want to keep that. And so what I want to do is on the quick access, I want to go /BMW.local /corp data /wallpapers. And I can't. And you know why? I do know why. There was something that we didn't do. We didn't make an additional DFS backup server. Okay, so it can't access the wallpaper data. We can access, if we just go /backup server svr /wallpapers. Can we do that? No, we can't. Okay, so to fix this problem here, there was one thing that we didn't do. Which in the folder here we had server configuration changes. We did one, but there was a space for another one. We didn't do the second one. Okay, so let's fix that, to which we're going to need to put in another configuration there. It's to do with DFS. So on our backup server, we don't have DFS installed. Minimize that, minimize that. Tools, there's no DFS. There is a DFS management, and it does know this, but they're all down. They're down because we needed to add a namespace, another namespace server, which is on this machine, because there was only one namespace server. It was on the main server, and when we closed it down, that meant that the namespace wasn't available anymore. So let's let's shut all this down. We'll come back in and we'll sign in with a temporary profile. Yet that's because it couldn't find a roaming profile. Shut down. Okay, let's power up our main server again, fix the problem, and put the picture back in here, into this box here. So our main server should be coming up. Here's our main server. Okay, our main server's back up again. And so in here what we need to do is go to the DFS management. And we need to tell it that not only did we have Active Directory replication between the two servers, and also a second DNS and a second global catalog server, the other thing that I neglected to do at that time was in this DFS distributed file system, what I need on this DFS here is to have, I've only currently got a single namespace server, which is the main server, which is the one that we turned off. So what we really need is add a namespace server. And the namespace server is going to be called the backup server. Find now, there's the backup server. Okay. And looking at the settings, I just go administrators have full and all others have read write. And go OK. So now we've got two namespace servers. If the first one falls over, the backup one is there and able to be used. And so that's what we really needed, and that I forgot to do earlier on when I was setting up the backup server as a domain controller. One of the things I needed to do was to go back to the main server and add the backup server as an additional namespace server for our distributed file system. So now it's there. If we open up the DFS management on here, we should be able to see now that it's a namespace and that the replications are all there and that the namespace servers are two namespace servers, which we couldn't see this part of it when we had this turned off before because the backup server was not a DFS namespace server. So it could see some of the replication stuff, but it couldn't see the actual namespace itself. So now that we've got this two namespace servers, we can successfully turn off our first server and everything should be right. I'm just going to quickly go have a look at our group policy manager because I think it was in here that we put the redirection for roaming profiles. So I think we did that. No, it might have been in the policies here. Was it Windows settings? No, it wasn't Windows settings. Administrative tools, system, and go down to user profiles. That's it. And I stopped, I deleted cached copies of roaming profiles, so it wasn't kept locally on the machine, which is why it logged in with a temporary profile previously. And we've set the roaming profile to the namespace. But because I didn't have the backup server as a second namespace server, of course, it couldn't retrieve the profile. So now that's been fixed. This should work quite fine. Okay, so now we're going to turn the main server off again, and we will shut him down. So this is our catastrophe. It's now shut down. We'll get our Windows 10 machine, and whoops, that's the main server. Our Windows 10 machine is already shut down. Okay, so now we'll go back to our Windows 10 machine here, and we're going to start our Windows 10 machine up. We'll leave our backup server there, so we can see that it's a namespace server, And the other thing that we want in here is the U1 wallpapers. So let's just drop that down a little bit so we can see. And the other U2, we're going to drop him down as well so we can see three things on there. So this is our U2. Let's log him in. Because the second one's a namespace server, it should now find him. Yep, we'll see. So this should be retrieving the profile off the namespace. Of which the backup domain controller, or the backup server, is a backup namespace server. And so you should be able to find the profile directory, which is here in the corporate data, and retrieve the profile for you too. Couldn't sign in. Okay, so what we're going to do is close. We're going to log out and log back in again. Temporary profile. Sometimes it takes twice. U2. Sign out. Sign back in again. Ah, okay. I know why. Because the Windows 10 machines doesn't know about the second DNS server, which is the backup server. So that's another thing that we need to fix. Okay. So back on our main server, we're going to web browse into our second router. So let's go 192.168.3.254. More information, go to the web page anyway. Oh, okay. We forgot to turn off all the add the server type stuff. Close, close. Okay, so it's there. Let's go admin and zero shell and log in. Yes, we're going to remember it. We're going to go to the DHCP because this is the thing that gives it the IP addresses out to the Windows 10 machine. And you'll notice that the backup server IP address config is 3.3, that's that thing there, is not in as a DNS server here. And it should be. Okay, so we're going to put in 3.3 in here. Yep. And we'll go save. And so when we restart this, it'll get a new IP address, well, and it'll have 3.2 and 3.3. So it'll know that our backup server is also a DNS server, which will allow it to find the Active Directory, the DNS server, and resolve names and everything, and find the backup server and find our Active Directory integrated namespace, because the namespace is not being found. 3.3, okay. So we've now fixed the DNS problem. Let's see if so 3.3, that's this machine here. Okay, so what we need to do now is look at the DNS on here. So if we go to our tools and go to DNS, do we have the right forwarders to get out to the internet? So in the zones here, we see both name servers. So we now know that backup server is a namespace server 3.3. And we've now told that via DHCP to our client because it didn't know that. And on the backup server, I'm going to look at the properties and have a look at the forwarders. So at the forwarders, it now forwards out to yes, it'll get out to the internet. I probably should put in here also 192.168.3.2 as another one. So it's, and they probably should be, that one should be first. And then 1.254 is, so that means if they're using this as a DNS server and this one can't name resolve, then it should first of all talk to the main server, and then if that doesn't work, then it should talk to my NBN router and go out to the internet. Okay, so let's try all of that. Go apply and okay. So now we've fixed up the DNS issue. Okay, so let's minimize this out of the road. We've got our two things. We've got our DFS namespace. Let's try signing out and signing back in again. Actually, what I'd like to do is I probably should restart the whole machine. Power. Restart. Because then it'll be forced to go back to the DHCP server and get the new settings, which will also include 3.3, which is the backup server DNS. Okay. So we've had to solve a few problems here. But it's instructive to know these sorts of issues in order to build in some resilience to your network. And if this doesn't work, I'm going to move to U1 or U3, because in here in Active Directory, users and computers, I'm pretty sure we've got a U1 and a U3 as well. Yeah, U1, U3. Now that time it didn't say, sorry I couldn't log you in. It's actually found it all, okay? So I think the DNS issue was solved there. So what we want to do is we want to show that our main server is down. Here's our two folders. Here's our Windows 10 machine, and what we want to show is that we can access, I want two of these. Second File Explorer. So now I've got two. Let's just put one to there and the other one to there. And so on here we want to go /2 bmw.local corp data wallpapers. and this one here is our home folder. So you can see it gets to the namespace folder. So the namespace isn't pointed towards any server, but that shows us that the DFS namespace is working on our second server and allowing access to the shared files. And so on this one here, double backslash, and let's go to, instead of going to BMW, we could go to, we could go to that and to the home folder, or we could just go, I suppose we could go bmw.local, go to our home folder and go to the home folder doesn't have anything actually, because we didn't restore it. The home folder is only on, this was only on, actually it's in the namespace, so it should actually be there. Okay, backslash U2. Oh, okay, that's not going to work because I've got to put in the corp data. Corp data. Okay, that shows me the home folder, and that shows me the U2 folder. Okay, so you can see that in the distributed file system, I've got access to the files off the Windows 10 machine that are actually on the backup domain controller, because that the distributed file system works because we put in a second DFS server, whereas we didn't have that. The other thing we had to solve was also the DNS. We didn't have the proper DNS on both of these. So if I show up a little CMD and make that a lot smaller, make him a lot smaller, and what I want to do is just go ipconfig/all, because I want to show that the DNS here is to 3.3 and 3.2, which is that's showing that it's pointing towards the local DNS server, which is the backup server. Okay, so we can take a screenshot of all of this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to push this up a little bit so it's all in the same line. And then I'm going to grab my green shot. Nope, here, green shot. Or snippy tool, either one. And what we want to do is show a capture region. I want my, I want everything basically. Okay. I'm going to copy this to the clipboard because I want to edit it. Sorry, copy it to the image editor, and then I'm going to save it. It's only because I want to highlight a few things. If you can't do that with, well, you could edit the image before you put it into your document. So what I'm going to do is I just want to use the highlighter to show that the main server is off. I want to show that we've got a backup server here as a namespace server, and that we can see all these folders here, and that we can see those folders. So here's the wallpapers folder, and here's the home for U2, and we can see the same things on the Windows 10 machine, that we can see the same corp data stuff there, and we can also see that our DNS had to be fixed so that both main server and backup server had to be the DNS servers, because we turned the backup server into a domain controller, also a DNS server, also a global catalog server, which allowed our Windows 10 machine to log in. And because we also made it a second namespace server up here, that we're able to access all of the information that's in the namespace, and we can still access it there. So, and that's what we needed to show. Okay, so let's copy that image and go back to our machine here and testing the scenario. So it's not actually needed. We actually did it anyway. Control V. We're going to put that in there. But the server configuration here, I want to put it also in here, Control V, because we've got this thing that shows that it was a second namespace server and that it was also a second DNS server, and that's what we had to do. So in here, let's resize this so it fits in there. So what were the what did we actually do? Okay, so what was required? So under here, I'm just going to write what was actually required. Created second, but that doesn't need to be. Is that because I've still got this open? File exit, close, okay. So the highlight's on still. How weird. Home, turn off the highlight. It's funny how no color highlight. Okay. So it's created the second domain controller. Including DNS and GC, Global Catalog. That's for logging in. We had to modify the DNS, and we also had to modify the DHCP to include the second DNS server. Modify the DHCP for the client to include the backup server as a DNS server, as the second DNS server. We had to create a second namespace server in DFS, distributed file system. Create the backup as a second namespace server in DFS. Okay, so DNS, we also had to set the right forwarders in here as well. Okay, so we set forwarders in the backup server DNS to point to the main server. That should be pointer. Okay, so on all of this, let's just go. There's no, and we can just go make these points. Okay. So what else did we do? So in summary, we created the second domain controller, including DNS and global catalog, which is logging in. We set the forwarders for the backup server DNS to point to the main server. We modified the DHCP for the client to include the backup server as the second DNS server. We created the backup server as a second namespace server in DFS. And I think that's all we needed to do to I think that's all we needed to do in order to make sure our client had the right access. And most of that's because the roaming profile for the client is redirected into the namespace. Yep. So that puts that onto the next. Include details of current server network status. Oh, it's all functional, it's all working. Okay, so I'm going to save that document, and that will end this particular that will end this particular video. Cool. Okay, so the next video will be about the next subject, which if I go back to log out, if I go back to certificate 4, log in again. So that ended the install and manage a server. Okay, so the next video will be configure a desktop environment, and in that there are video resources which contain most of what we need anyway. So we've got a Ubuntu domain. Here's the assessment practical configurations and the more configuring that's required on Windows 10, for which we will use the existing domain structure that we've just set up. Okay. I'll see you in the next video.